Happy to do it, sir.
Okay, I've got 1 o'clock. So we'll bring the meeting to order. Thank you all for attending. Of course, my screen goes wonky. There we go. So I'll ask Deputy Mayor DeBreen if she would do the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As we gather, we recognize and acknowledge the traditional keepers of this land with whom we share today. The Township of Southgate is a part of the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Six Nations of the Grand River, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Haudenosaunee, and Saugeen Métis. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are, and as it reflects our histories, may we live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples.
Thank you, Barb. Madam Clerk, is there anyone registered for open forum?
Yes, we have one, Matt Rapke from Wilson Developments.
Mr. Rapke, welcome. There you are.
Hello.
Welcome. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks. So I'm here representing Wilson Developments. We're asking for an extension on the town's option to repurchase a property that they sold us or a company that we own in April 2022. There's a condition that we had to have started a building within 2 years of the purchase, which expired. So that was April of last year. The 2 years, 2-year period ended. And we have not started a building because after we got the site plan process started, we had to do an EIS and discovered an endangered meadowlark on the property, and that triggered a separate set of legislation that requires us to replant 10 acres that will be destroyed on this property somewhere else. So we spent the last year trying to acquire another property, another site to host this habitat. We have found a willing host in Holland Center, and we are ready to execute a lease with the owner of this property to host this habitat. But we need the extension on this purchase so that the town no longer has the right to purchase the property back right now because we want to get a building in the ground in the summer. So we're asking for an extension to November of this year to get the building started. As I said, we want to start summer, so we think that gives us a lot of time, especially since we've got this lease lined up. And that's pretty much the scope of the request. We're hoping that you will grant it today. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And yes, there is a report on the agenda today just for the council to consider just what you're describing there. So thank you, sir. We will give that some due consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, confirmation of is there anyone else, Madam Clerk? No. Okay. Confirmation of the agenda. Someone care to move that, please? Jim and Barb, any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Barb.
Would it be appropriate to amend the agenda to move up the item regarding the Wilson development to following the public meeting?
If I could
Yeah, please.
request,
Yeah.
if we could do the public meeting and then our two delegations, and then Jim's report is in relation to one of the delegations, and if you can move mine up before Derek's, then that would help everybody that's sitting here.
Sure, whatever you say, Madam
Okay.
Clerk, whatever,
Okay.
what she said. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I need a seconder for the agenda as being proposed. Jim, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Now, I hope somebody remembers what we're doing.
I got it.
All right. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest related to any item on today's agenda? I will be declaring a pecuniary interest on one of John's reports regarding, I think it was tenders. Yes, thank you, John. So when we get to that point, I'll likely forget, but I'll try to remember. Any other declaration? Not seeing any. If one should arise during the course of the meeting, you can, of course, declare it at that time. We have a public meeting this morning regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for decks and accessory structures in the entire township of Southgate. So I shall read what has been placed in front of me. This is a public meeting concerning proposed zoning bylaw amendments pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act, File C32-24, Township Decks and Accessory Structures. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the clerk, Lindsay Green. Please be aware that planning reports will be presented to council when the applicable bylaw is presented for consideration at a council meeting. No person or public body shall be added as a party to the hearing of the appeal unless before the bylaw was passed, the person or public body made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the council, or in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Anyone wishing to file a notice of appeal is encouraged to seek legal advice on your appeal rights given recent changes to Planning Act because of Bill 185. So the first and only zoning bylaw amendment file number this morning, or this afternoon rather, is C32-24. The purpose and effect of the changes to the zoning bylaw proposed generally apply to the following. Section 3 changes definition of accessory building and structure and add definitions of carport, required yard, and required setback. Section 5.1A through H to clarify when main building setbacks apply versus when accessory buildings may encroach into required setbacks. Section 5.18 to implement regulations to establish clear rules for above and below ground swimming pools, including safety features. Change interior side yard provisions in residential 1, residential 2, 3, 5, and 6 zones to increase setback distances for dwellings without a garage or carport attached to the main building. Other minor changes pertaining to maximum 1 additional residential permitted in certain areas within a detached building and other provisions for separate accessory structures. The location of the subject lands are the entire township of Southgate. May I please have confirmation of the clerk that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Proper notice was given in accordance with the act. Since it's township wide, it was in the papers and on our website and social media. And this was also part of, correct me if I'm wrong, Planning Department, the public open house later last year.
Yes, it was. Most excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now ask our senior planning consultant, Bill White, who is online with us today, to review correspondence received from commenting agencies. Welcome, Bill. Always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Milne, you and council and staff as well. As was mentioned, this amendment was part of the open house held in November. It wasn't the most popular item. I think everyone talked a lot about additional residential units. So there wasn't a lot of feedback into accessory building structures, which are undergoing fairly significant changes and clarifications as a result of this proposed amendment. Comments were received from the County of Grey, Enbridge Gas, Historic Saugeen Métis, and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. The Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority asked for a change to one of the sections pertaining to accessory structures so that they're not located in hazard lands. I think that change could be accommodated without with fairly minor rewording provisions. The Grand River Conservation Authority did not have any wording changes that they were requesting. As I mentioned, I don't think there were any other comments on the website or received from the public. And if council would like, I can go through the proposed amendments in a little more detail. The mayor did read the gist of what's happening. There is a planning report included with the notice of public meeting, and the proposed changes are in attachment 2 in red. And there's also some pictures that were used at the open house that attempt to illustrate some of the common situations that you might run into or landowners might run into. I guess the biggest change, if I had to emphasize anything, would be that in the our residential 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 zones, one of the side yard setbacks is now increased if there is no attached garage or carport. So you can only go to, say, a 1 meter or 1.5 meter setback if you have an attached garage or carport with the house. If you don't have an attached garage or carport in those zones, then you have to have at least, say, a 3.5 meter or 11 or 12 foot side yard on one side. That's just simply to accommodate a garage or carport in the future, or to allow cars to park beside the home. And that's particularly more important when we get into additional residential units, which are now going through the process of being approved, because that in those cases, tandem parking is allowed. So it gives additional space on the site for tandem parking. So those are big changes to almost all the residential zones, increasing the side yard on one side. Most homes these days are built with attached garages or carports. So in the major new subdivisions, they probably won't notice much difference. The other thing was some safety rules for swimming pools, and that's some new additions to 5.18 of the zoning bylaw, more or less requiring proper fencing that's at least 4 feet high and that's not climbable by a child, and that the gates have self-closing locks on them so that it makes it much more difficult for a small child to wander in and fall into the pool. And also in an above ground pool, even to go up the steps and get in, there's a requirement for some kind of self-closing lock on those gates so that someone couldn't get up the stairs and fall in. So trying to increase the safety around pools. So that's another important change. The rest of this is all more or less clarifications to wording that already exists in the bylaw. There's a provision that allows for human habitation of accessory buildings, an accessory building now, which is in line with your additional residential unit provisions, in that now the province has mandated you can actually live in a residence in or above a garage, so long as it complies with the building code and is connected to water and sewer. I can go into much more detail if there's specific questions, but that's the major thrust of the proposed amendments.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And I think we'll deal with more detail as people ask questions, if there are any. Were there any written comments from the public? Bill?
No, Mayor Milne.
Okay, good. Are there any questions or discussion from council? Barb?
Just one quick question, because you elaborated on the swimming pool piece through you, Chair Milne, to Bill. This is for swimming pools or properties going forward. Is there a requirement through enforcement of pools built prior to this amendment? How does that affect homeowners that have pools currently that may or may not, they may not meet this minimum standard?
If I may, through you, Mayor Milne, these provisions would not be retroactive because they're in the zoning bylaw, and in my opinion, unless someone were to alter the pool that they have already, they could not be required to comply with these. Some municipalities have gone to a swimming pool and fencing bylaw on its own, and those may have a little more flexibility for trying to apply to existing pools. I think most pools that go in these days, especially if there's a proper installer, have the kinds of things that promote the safety for children. But, I can't say for sure that that happens in all cases. So, but these amendments would not be, in my opinion, applicable unless the pool was to be altered in some way. But if the township wanted to go to a separate bylaw for swimming pools and fences, you might be able to impose some of these things on existing pools. It would be I don't know how many pools the township has in it, but to go back and find them all and make sure they had the safety provisions might be a fairly sizable challenge, but certainly you could do with this, like you might with that, and put them on the website and send out notices and maybe put them in the economic development newsletter and so forth to encourage pool safety on people's own volition.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions for now? Martin?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Bill. One point that you mentioned, some of these won't affect the building, like obviously you have to have fire separation drywall with garages for living upstairs, but lumping garages and carports together, they're like chalk and cheese. You could have a carport just made out of 2 posts, no walls, or you could have one completely built and the only difference is it doesn't have a garage door. So the amendment is just defining the space from the lot line and all that. But being grouped together as a port, like a garage, would that affect, you think, the building permit itself? They wouldn't be able to say, well, you're building this for your car. It's going to be automatically a garage when it's only going to be a carport. Would this affect that aspect of the building permits?
Bill?
The only impact I can see by grouping them together, because they would all have to comply with the building code. If they were under the size limit under the building code, which your CBO may be able to confirm that number, it has changed a little bit, but if they were under a certain size, they may not need a permit, but they would still be subject to the zoning rules. The only thing that maybe you might not like that this might allow would be a carport as a detached structure in the back, in a backyard. And because it doesn't have roof or walls, and if it's used for storage and that kind of thing, you may be able to see all the stuff that's sitting in the carport, but other than that, when they're attached, generally they're, they have to comply with the building code. The posts have to be set back properly and all that. So, I don't think it will be a compromising issue under the building code, but maybe the CBO would have more information. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah. May I have one more, Brent?
I'm just going to ask Phil if he wants, do you want to add anything to that? No,
Sure.
You're good? Okay, so go ahead, Martin, please.
Yeah, thank you. And then another part of the report said no front yard accessory building. That makes sense in town. That won't apply for rural because we've had some files over the years where a garage has been built in front of the main house because that's the only place they could put it. And it was in the country and it was surrounded by trees. Nobody saw it. So will there be leniencies in that way for rural residents?
Not sure about that. We can take that under advisement if council wants to. I think the intent here was to put them in behind the principal dwelling in all cases, including rural. So if I could take that one under advisement, they may need to, they may need to put get a variance if they have to put it in front. So I'd have to look through to
I
make
think
sure.
that one file a couple of years ago, Bill, they did put a workshop out on their property in front of the house and they had to go through all that. So there is ways they can do it. That was my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for that question. Thank you, Bill, for the answers. Any other questions? Okay, is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of this application? Is there anyone present who'd like to make a submission in opposition to this application? Are there any questions or further discussion from members of council? Okay, not hearing or seeing any, I will declare this public portion of the meeting adjourned at 1:20. So going back to our meeting, our regular meeting, let's see. We have yes, we have delegations and presentations. The first this morning or this afternoon. I keep saying this morning. I got up early, too early probably. Southeast Grey Community Health Center Program and Activities Update. And I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Jason to receive and Jim to receive second. Gentlemen, welcome. It's not often we see three esteemed gentlemen all at the same time in the chambers. Well, maybe two.
Two.
Yeah, okay, two.
We'll go with
True,
two.
yeah, fair enough,
Yeah.
fair
Yeah.
enough. So anyway, welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning, good afternoon for everyone else. Just thought,
Thanks.
I'm back. And it is nice to be on this side. It's good seeing everybody again. I won't introduce me. I'm John Woodbury here. I'm the treasurer for the Community Health Center. We have Larry Mann as the chair of our board and Alex Hector is our EDO. So we're here just to bring you up to speed on what we're doing and some plans for the future. Same as you guys, challenges with budgets and everything else and space and getting things approved. So you know the routine, but I'll turn it over to Larry for a few words and I'll stand back here and try and behave. Please.
Thank you, John.
They know better.
Yeah,
Welcome, Larry.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor Mel and councillors. In October, Governor, God, I'm starting to slide into that thing right now, aren't I? Okay. In October, Mr. Ford announced that Jane Philpott, Dr. Jane Philpott, was going to head up new primary care, healthcare programs. And her vision is a health home. And she describes a health home, and that's a new term for us here. But we've had a health home. We collectively have had a health home for the past 13 years. And Alex is going to bring you up to date on our health home.
Very good. Welcome, Alex.
Great, Mayor and Council, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to come to Southgate and provide some information and have a conversation about what we're up to. You're absolutely fantastic partners, and we really do appreciate your support and encouragement. So just a quick reminder about what the CHC is all about. We're an interdisciplinary healthcare organization, but we're much more than a doctor's office. So in addition to all the normal primary care services that we provide, and allied health services such as social work and physiotherapy, we also provide a significant level of what I would call social supports to those in our community that need it. We act as the principal and first point of contact of continuing care, and it really is all about keeping people out of the hospital and helping people with preventative measures. We focus on community health and well-being. We support the social determinants of health, and those are things like food insecurity, income insecurity. There are a lot of people that struggle with aspects of their lives that impact their health. And so if we can help with those aspects of their life, it does improve their health. So we have a special focus on vulnerable community members, seniors in particular, youth, clients with mental health and addictions challenges, new parents, and so on. We provide community members, as I mentioned before, with services such as social work, physiotherapy, nutrition, and all that care is delivered close to home. Great example of that in action is a person in for a routine medical appointment, gets their blood work done, and there's a problem with their blood sugars, and they're possibly looking at a diabetes situation. So the nurse practitioner or the doctor takes that individual and has a conversation with them about lifestyle and food and so on. And if they sense that that individual needs some help with their diet, immediately makes a referral to the dietitian so that the dietitian can sit down with our client and have a conversation about healthy eating practices and how to manage those blood sugars. And it happens as quickly as that. Our physicians and nurse practitioners enjoy just a tremendous partnership with their allied health staff. And the fact that the person is sort of just around the corner or down the hall really makes those types of things happen very, very quickly. So we're in our 4 locations, 50 employees. Our annual budget right now is about $7 million, just under 13,000 active clients, almost 40,000 patient visits last year. And those patient visits are either, I guess the vast majority of them are face-to-face in our facilities, but we also provide a virtual care option as well as home visits in situations where an individual is not able to physically get to our building because of a medical or physical situation. The program events that are on the first page are really for the CHC in total, and I've got some more specific information relative to Southgate further on in the presentation. So next slide, please. Oh, great. Gee, we're way ahead of things here. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Southgate represents just under 20% of our total client base in terms of clients with active charts, and in terms of the volume of patient visits, about 14%. And those numbers are kind of more or less. I had to do an extract by postal code, and of course, the NOC postal code and Grey Highlands, it sort of all interrelates. So I took that postal code information and then looked at all the various rosters of our providers in Southgate to come up with those numbers. So they're kind of plus or minus accurate, just to give you an indication. Next slide, please. So just to orient you with our 4 locations in Chatsworth, we're in the municipal office in the basement location at the back of the building. And of course, in Dundalk, we're in the Erskine Church, which is just a fantastic facility for us. We're in Markdale in the old school board building, and our medical center is in the Lions Club building right on Main Street in Dundalk. And I'll have just a few more words about that in a couple of seconds, because I know it's on everybody's mind, including mine. So our strategy operates with sort of 4 pillars. The first is having experienced 10 years of very significant growth. We took some time to build on our strengths. So all about strengthening the operation, the organization, ensuring people that are trained properly, have the right equipment, good policies and procedures in place, and so on. The second pillar is health equity. And what we mean by health equity is regardless of your social, financial, racial circumstances, you're entitled to the same outcome. Just a great example of that, and it's maybe not a positive example, but it is a good example, is suppose somebody was diagnosed with cancer. Whether you were affluent or not affluent, you're expecting the same outcome, which is to be cured. And so that's really what health equity is all about for us. Branding and communications, which is really getting the message out. And we have really, I think, done a good job at that. It's an area that we never really can sit still on and take for granted. And where it benefits is in the access to our programs and social supports. We've seen a tremendous uptick in those numbers over the last couple of years coming out of COVID. And then the fourth component of our strategy is our the Grey Bruce Ontario Health Team. And so working with partners to strengthen and improve how healthcare is delivered in the region. And there's a lot of work yet to be done on that aspect of it. Next slide. Community programs. So we are not funded by the ministry or any provincial body for our programs. We're fully dependent on municipal funding. And I want to say a big thank you to Southgate for your financial support for our programs. And I hope in a couple of minutes you'll see that that you feel that you're getting good value for that investment. Together with Grey Highlands and Melanchthon, we receive $80,000 a year, and that money is put to good use. In Southgate, there were 912 program sessions that took place in Dundalk Village. Almost 13,000 participant visits, which works out to $2.38 per participant visit. And I think that's great value. In addition to the programs that we design and develop and deliver, we also work with partners. And you can see on the presentation just a few of the partners that we work with to deliver services and programs. In a sense, if we encounter somebody, and you don't have to be a patient to access. Anybody can access any of our programs. If we encounter somebody who needs help, who's got a difficult circumstance in their lives, we have a conversation with them and we understand what their situation is, and we help either with immediate support, life essentials, food, clothing, or in some cases, put them in touch with the right social agency, whether it's through the county or through a private organization or through just an association. But we put that person in touch with that so they're able to get the resources that they need to help resolve their situation and get on with their lives. Next slide is just an image of the program guides that we do. That was the fall program guide. I think one of the most essential or important parts of the programs is an acknowledgement that social isolation is very unhealthy. And in particular, seniors who are socially isolated have a shorter life expectancy. It is absolutely vital to have a healthy and vibrant community, to have social interactions, and that's where our programs help. So this is as of last fiscal, our year end is March 31st. So this is as of March 2024. So you can see there the number of sessions and the number of participants and the types of programs that we did. And it ranges anywhere from meals to help with income tax, to yoga, to English as a second language, to Aquafit, and so on. There's a real broad range of programs that are provided with the money that Southgate does provide. Healthcare is experiencing a lot of challenges. You probably hear about that on the news on a regular basis, and we're not immune to that. And we are experiencing some challenges. Our funding has not kept pace with inflation. I'm operating with a wage scale from 2019. I don't have the ability to adjust or to keep my staff's wages on pace with inflation. The only way I can do that is by reducing services, by not filling vacancies, and that is not good for population health. So we're always putting pressure on the ministry to at least keep us even with inflation. And I'm sad to say that has not occurred yet. There is a significant inequity in wages between what our staff do and other sectors of healthcare. And a great example, we recently had just a really tremendous, effective physiotherapist was offered a job in a hospital, the same work, the same hours, Monday to Friday, no shift work, $20,000 a year more in a hospital. And I was paying that individual at the very top of the wage scale for that particular position. So it's an ongoing challenge for us. And capacity is another issue. We're maxed out, and we're maxed out not only in terms of staff, but also in terms of space. And I want to talk just for a moment about the plans that we have for our space in Dundalk Village. And I'm sure you're aware that there's been a very significant effort to assemble land and put together a capital request to the ministry for a new clinic. And we're all excited about that. And we're still waiting for the government to approve the funding for it. And a big thank you to Mayor and Council for your efforts to advocate for that at the recent Roma conference. And I understand an idea was floated there to perhaps approach a private developer to make the capital investment and then lease it back to us. And we're wide open to possibilities. I don't think it's a realistic idea because of the associated rent cost, and sort of just a back of the napkin calculation. Our new facility would be about 10,000 square feet. That'd be about $20,000 a year in rent. Currently, we pay $12,000 a year in rent. So sorry, I'll back up for a second. I got my numbers off a little bit. That's not $20,000 a year. That's $20,000 a month for a 10,000 square foot building at roughly $20 a square foot. We currently pay $1,200 a month to the Lions Club, excuse me, for the rent in that building. So we'd require a very significant increase in our operating budget. And every time I've gone to ask, and I've asked every year since I've been on this job for the last 4 years, they've said no. That being said, when the government reconvenes, assuming they get reelected, I am going to approach the parliamentary assistant and follow up on that idea. And Mr. Mayor, I will copy you on that correspondence to keep you in the loop on it. It's worth exploring. If they can give us the operating dollars for rent, then we can very quickly find a commercial partner and move it forward. But we'll have to sort of cross that bridge when we get to it. The last challenge, and this is a short list. There's an awful lot. We could talk all day about it, but I think the most significant one is there's a lot of people in Southgate and all across Grey and Bruce that do not have access to primary care. They do not have a physician. They do not have a nurse practitioner. There is in our catchment area, which is basically Chatsworth, Grey Highlands, Southgate, part of West Grey, part of Melanchthon, about 18,000 people that do not have access to a primary care provider. So these people either suffer or get ill and without a timely diagnosis, have a shortened lifespan, or spend a lot of time waiting in the hospital for routine work. An example could be a person with a heart condition that requires blood monitoring. And if they don't have a primary care provider, the only way they can get their blood monitored is go to Emerge. And that's definitely not an effective way, either in terms of the cost or in terms of the timeliness or the effectiveness of it to deliver healthcare. And so there is work underway. We've all read the announcement about Jane Philpott and I think it was $1.8 billion investment in primary care. There's some behind the scenes work going on in our OHT to put together a request in a proactive way. I'm working on that committee, and we'll see what happens. What I'm finding in healthcare, there's a lot of words, but not a lot of action. And so we'll see. Next slide. So we need a bit of help from council. We are, and you have been fantastic. I think there's more to be done in terms of advocating for healthcare. We are in the planning stages right now of putting together a rural healthcare symposium with all of the pillars of healthcare targeted at municipal officials to increase your awareness and your knowledge of how the health system functions and what the successes and the challenges are, so that when you encounter officials from the provincial government, whether they're staff or elected officials, you've got a good set of information to work on to advocate for investments into healthcare into our region. That's coming in the spring, so look for an invitation sometime in the next, well, we'll probably be issuing invitations in March. Again, I can't get any government people to commit to doing anything right now because the election, we're in this quiet period. So once the election's concluded, then we'll have a chance to sit down, pick out a date and a venue and so on. And we'll certainly make sure that everyone gets invited to that. Your attendance to that would be really appreciated, and I think very informative, and from our perspective, it's very, very important. The last in terms of planning for the future is the municipal funding for our community programs. We will be back here with another delegation specifically to talk about money, likely in the fall, as we get ready for the next fiscal budget. And we'll certainly have a chance to have a conversation around your perception of value and how it's helping the community or not. We certainly hope that you feel the same as us, that it is making a difference and is helping people. And we'll look forward to that conversation. We know that budgets are tight, and we don't want to spend tax dollars in a frivolous way. And we've got a good track record of stretching those dollars to make them go pretty far. So anyway, that's all I have to say in terms of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you, John and Larry, for the presentation. And as you mentioned, Alex, we did have a really good delegation with PA Riardi at the Roma conference. He seemed genuinely interested in the notion, as you described it, of a private investor. But I've come to realize, and again, with your numbers today, that's not realistic unless they change their tune, which is unlikely, at least in the short term. Mr. Riardi was very interested, I think, or he seemed interested from his staff to find out what is the holdup, because we had the same delegation a year ago at the last Roma conference. And anyway, we're going to follow up with him after today to find out, has he done anything? We'll probably get the same as you, no reaction until the election's over. In any case, does council have any? Oh, Joan, you have a question? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question. Thank you, Alex and John and the other gentlemen. Thank you for being here. I just want to impress on the community engagement that Southeast Grey Community Health Center has presented to us. They're really committed to promoting healthy community and work with individuals and groups like myself for the general well-being of the community. It's really a pleasure to work with you guys and your team and your staff. And I can't thank you enough for all you do and the support that you have given to all community groups and the life you have touched on a daily basis. So I just want to say thank you for your presentation and thank you for accepting us on a daily basis with all of what you do.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Well, if that endorsement doesn't warm your heart, nothing will.
It does.
Thank you, Joan. Anyone else? Barb, please.
I couldn't have said it any better. I was actually going to thank you as well. Thank you. Of those 18,000 we've had the conversation about, we've been waiting since November 2021 since the photo op. We were all out there in the snow, throwing gravel. Of the 18,000 in South Grey, what capacity, if we were to build this new facility in Dundalk as we had planned, shovels in the ground as soon as the snow flies away or melts, what capacity would that provide?
It would provide all the required space that we would need, but not the staff. I still have to get the government to fund healthcare practitioners to meet that need, and that's part of the work that's happening right now with our OHT. What we understand is that the Ontario Health and the Ministry of Health will not accept requests from individual organizations. They'll accept requests that are integrated and organized at the full OHT level. And in fact, I've got a meeting tomorrow with two colleagues, one from Kincardine and one from Owen Sound, to sort of map out what that whole picture looks like for Grey and Bruce, so that we can put our request together and submit it in. So at this stage, it's an unknown, but we will need staff in order to do this. We can't do it with our existing resources.
So just for me to get that clear in my head,
Sure.
the physical space has the capacity to serve the Southgate and even perhaps the surrounding
Yeah.
the perimeter of Southgate
Yeah.
if we had the staff.
That's correct.
And currently there's obviously a shortage of doctors and nurses, which, that's another whole issue.
Yeah, it's interesting. In our luck in staffing, in particular physicians, has been very, very good. Our physicians, now we have 3 FTE, and there are 5 physicians that share 3 FTE, and they're all paid a salary and excuse me, and have benefits just like any other employee. So they aren't burdened with the whole aspect of running a business for yourself. We recently had a vacancy for a physician, and I'm thinking, oh no, here we go. It'll be a year or two till we get somebody in. We immediately had 2 applicants, and within a week, an offer out to both. One declined us because it's not enough money, and one said, "Yeah, this is great." And originally, well, actually, it's not announced yet, so I'll save on that. So I think I think people are attracted to the CHC model because of the focus it places on health and well-being and the importance of social determinants and the fact that it's a team-based environment. So I think we'd be able to get people. It would take some time to ramp it up. However, like 18,000 people in Grey and Bruce, that's 20 nurse practitioners and 7 or 8 doctors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a realistic view would be, and we'll be meeting on this tomorrow, is what does that look like on a phased in basis? Is it, sort of a multi-year plan? Is it 5 years, 7 years? And those are the discussions we're starting to have tomorrow and we'll be having with Ontario Health as well.
Thank you. And I think there's the holistic approach that the Community Health Center takes to healthy communities in general is the direction that we need to go. Getting the capacity and getting the physical space is something that we've worked on for years. When John was the mayor in the last term of council, we advocated so hard for that and worked with the county. We also want to build capacity for the future because we know that Southgate, Dundalk specifically, is growing. Although the permits don't show it last year, but they'll come back and the plans are there. So we need to look to the future and plan for that. But I'm glad to hear that we're looking at it collaboratively.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good. Well, again, thank you, Larry, Alex, and John. Thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate your time and your message. And we look forward to discussing funding in the future.
Absolutely. It's our favorite topic. Mayor,
it's
Council. It's not. I know. I'm being facetious. Thank you for your time and attention today. I really do appreciate it and look forward to further discussions as we get more information.
Very good. Safe journey home. Thank you.
Hope the rest of your morning goes fine.
So do I. Thank you, fellas.
Take care.
Okay, motion, we have the motion to receive. All those in favor? That is carried. The next delegation we have this morning is from Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, Carl Sider. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
Very good. Be it resolved, the council received the delegation from Grey Sauble. Barb and Joan will second that. Thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Good. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon. And I'm Carl Sider with the Saugeen Soluble Northern Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Program. So that's my day job as a project manager for the program. And today we're going to be talking about delivery of that program through the Risk Management Services, which is a municipal responsibility. So to date, that responsibility has been handled through staff, through your own staff, through the municipality. And we were, I guess Jim reached out to us and was inquiring whether that service could be carried out through the Conservation Authority. Overall, Grey Sauble is conducting that service on behalf of 14 municipalities in Grey and Bruce. And that partnership has been going for the past almost 10 years. So that is going really well in terms of a delivery model. It does make it a lot more efficient for each municipality that's involved because you're taking a portion of time that each staff member, collectively would have had to been doing separately. That is now consolidated into Grey Sauble's staff. So overall, we have developed these agreements for delivery. And the way they're broken down in terms of cost by municipality is roughly based on the workload and effort. And the main workload and effort is developing risk management plans and renewing them and doing inspections related to those plans. So that's on the ground that we find the bulk of the work. We also do screenings. So any building permit or planning application that falls within a source protection area requires a screening notice. And those are fairly routine. We don't find a lot of issues or threats, as we call them, that relate to applications on those properties, but we have to screen them and make sure that they're not concerns under the source protection plan. And then one other sort of ongoing requirement is the annual reporting. So as risk management officials, we have to report our activities to the local source protection authorities. So that's how the program has been running to date. As I mentioned, there's a team of two that work out of Grey Sauble, myself and my colleague Karen Gillen. I have a strong background from working with Ministry of Environment. I did a lot of work with Environmental Protection Act, spills, fuel threats, that sort of thing. So that comes in handy when we're dealing with the chemical side or the industrial side of the threats. And then Karen has got a very strong background with a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Science. So when it comes to the farm activities and the field component, she has a really firm understanding of those threats. And so between the two of us, it is a good model and understanding of what kind of activities and reasonable measures that are industry best practices, that sort of thing, to keep up with and make sure that people are meeting our requirements. So my understanding, and it's we've received a few files in terms of active risk management plans that have been negotiated or are in place for the municipality, and primarily Dundalk is the zone of protection, and so all of that upfront work is looking like it's in good position. It's all in place so that you're meeting all the requirements, and the main plan that I've been reviewing to date is for the Edgewood Suites and looking at the risk management measures that are in place to mitigate things like stormwater management, the sanitary sewers, snow and salt storage that are on the property. So that plan is in place and approved, but it would need to be renewed periodically. And if there are issues or concerns, then we would do follow-ups directly with the landowner. In terms of new plans that are anticipated or potentially, there was a change in the thresholds for fuel storage and for salt application threats at the provincial level. And so those might necessitate a few additional risk management plans for salt or fuel storage. So that's something that we would work through the process to make sure those threats are either have a plan or are removed or mitigated so that they're not ongoing threats. So that's something that we'll be working through with staff and in the process. So really at this stage, it is something for your consideration as a municipality and through consultation with staff, whether a 5-year agreement would be suitable through this delivery model with Grace Auble. If it does go forward and is approved by council, then we would work with municipal staff, making sure that they're trained and up to speed in terms of our notification process and keeping us in the loop when those applications are coming through the system. So that's something we want to maintain, that good connection so that it does keep the information flowing and it doesn't get bogged down because it's not done internally. And then the other obvious thing would be then to carry out our mandated requirements under Clean Water Act and perform those duties on your behalf. We do report back on an annual basis just to let the municipality know here's the number of activities that took place, and adjusting our workload and costs on an annual basis just to make sure they're meeting up with our expectations. So from our perspective, it's fairly straightforward. It's a good model and it seems to be working to date, but obviously would be open to questions or concerns if you have any.
Very good. Well, thank you, Carl, for the presentation. Does council have any questions of clarification? There is a report on the agenda to consider appointing Grace Auble to this task. Barb?
Thank you. Through you. Hi, Carl. Nice to see you. Can vouch for his thoroughness and experience. I have a couple of questions, but they're more for the staff report. But as part of your service, do you provide any education piece to those living within a source protection area? I know new residents coming into the area, they're not used to seeing signs from wherever they came from, the source protection area. And I mean, that is to create awareness. But what do you do as an organization to help educate people on how, that are living in a source protection area? The other question was Edgewood Suites, because that's near well D5, and I guess that has to do with the salt and snow load and all that. Yeah. But sorry, the education piece about how to store their fuels in their garage, don't dump down the stormwater. How do we get that message out?
Yeah. So I'll put both hats on because it's got to go into both categories. So I'll start with the source water protection program side, because that's primarily where education outreach responsibilities fall. So myself and staff, we work with realtors, associations, getting the message out. We have a lot of great fact sheets and information sheets. And so that's something that we promote and try to get out to the community and the networks that we have contacts with. And obviously through the municipality is a great source to whether there's an information campaign that we want to do on your behalf. So that's really where the education outreach responsibilities lie. In terms of risk management, we have an inherent need to do education outreach as we connect with landowners that are being affected in the zones or potentially affected. So if we're going to do a review of salt application or salt storage, then we'll work either a letter through the municipal tax bill or some sort of communication piece that we can help to include without those mailouts. We do a lot of sort of outreach with the fire departments or whoever, the associations that do salt application, so that when we go to meet the landowners that have to meet these responsibilities, they're not surprised or they understand the requirements. So it falls in both, and we use a lot of existing groups to work with to get that message out.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving the report or the presentation? That is carried. Thank you very much, Carl.
Great.
And as I said, we will be considering the staff report soon.
Good.
I
Thank
won't
you for
say
your time.
now, but soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, adoption of the minutes. Care to move those from February 5th of this year? Joan, thank you. Second. Barb, all in favor? That is carried. Did we want to do the Wilson Developments one now? Is that going to do Jim's? Okay. Jim, we have reports here from report in the bylaw regarding just the presentation that we just received. Chief Administrative Officer. Someone care to move that? Barb, seconded by Jim. Okay. Jim, you have your report, please.
Yeah, so, excuse me, as the report indicates, I've been the risk management official since 2011. And we've been fortunate in Dundalk for minimal significant drinking water threats. Excuse me. But as time goes on and more developments coming our way, I think we need an outside source to have their eyes on this as well. They're dealing with this day in and day out, whereas it's a portion of duties on my behalf and with other workloads. So I reached out to Carl, and I think it's a very economical solution for us at the rates they've put in to the agreement. And I just would like to say that you know, we've got through a lot of period of time with the development of these plans and stuff. We do go out there occasionally. We do have some education and outreach materials. They're a little outdated maybe right now, but would looking forward to moving with Grace Auble into the risk management official inspector duties.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Barb?
Thank you through you and to you. I have to say that we've been in good stead. We've been held very well by your risk management capabilities, and I think Dundalk has been served very well. I can see this as a very economical option. Is any of this growth related? Like, is this water, wastewater, or is this because it's not necessarily those living in the source protection area, but those that come into contact with the source protection area?
Jim?
Yes and no, growth related, because as you put a new well on, that establishes a new playing field of where the aquifer and the water's coming from and who now has some implications maybe. So it is partially growth related, but it's also back when this was established of what risks were in the area. And like I say, we were fortunate. We didn't have very many. And we don't have our wells surrounded by agriculture as per se. So some of those threats aren't there. The threats are always there out on the highway for, you know, a tanker spill or something like that. So they may not be our own residents, but it could be an implication of something that happens within the source protection zone. So.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the bylaw to enact the report or the recommendation from the preceding report. Jim will move. Who will second? Joan will second that. Thank you very much. Anything further to add on the bylaw, Jim?
No, just, we do have, if, council goes through with the bylaws, there's certificates of appointment for Carl and, Karen, for their services.
Well, we're certainly not going to back up now if you got the certificate already made. So just saying, just saying. Did we get a mover and seconder? Yes, we did. Any further questions from council? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. So, Jim, do you want to?
You and Jim present them?
Sure. We can do that. You getting in there? Yep. Go take it for her. You know she wants in.
If you fold it back and her little
Perfect. Thanks, sir. You bet.
Somebody.
All righty, moving along. Next report is from the,
No, it's from me. It's from me,
oh, right,
remember?
we got the Wilson,
Yes.
item. Where is that in the agenda?
9.7.1 and 9.7.2.
Oh, yeah, here we are. So it's legislative services. It's regarding a purchase and sale extension approval for Wilson Developments to the property in the Eco Park. Someone care to move that, please? Barb will move. Who would like to second that? Martin, would you second that? Yes, he will. Thank you so much. Chief Melnick, you're up.
It's me.
Just testing, just testing.
I thought you were
I'm so determined to get that one done.
sorry. I thought you were serious.
Well, it was, so you started laughing.
Okay.
We're getting a little punch drunk
Um,
here. Okay.
So
Settle
we
down,
have
people.
this report that staff are recommending approval of entering into an agreement with Wilson to extend. In the report was included their request that has a lot of the background information and our open forum. Matt Rapke spoke this morning and touched on a few of the reasons that they're asking for this extension. I'm not sure if Jim wants to add anything to it, but at this point, they've moved forward with several aspects of their development and incurred substantial financial expenses. So staff are requesting approval of this.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we did talk to legal about this as well, didn't we?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, I just want to include that, I think it was, the summer before last, perhaps, we started, engaging with their consultant about an opportunity to look at any lands that we had around Eco Park, the lagoon area that could be potential habitat for exchange. The lagoon was a good fit, but we did not at the time want to limit ourselves with our expansion ongoing and coming forward. So we didn't know exactly how that would play out. So we ended up saying that we couldn't offer the lands. So that put them on the hunt again. So that's been part of the reason, but they've been very good to work with so far and deserving that they found the location. I thought personally, it would have to be a little bit more closer to home than in Holland Center, but anyhow, if that satisfies the need, then that's fine.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Barb?
Thank you. And I meant to ask this before, and unfortunately that moment, you might not be able to answer it on behalf of Matt. Since it was through the EIS study and it's part of Grand River Conservation, was there no land considered in the Grand River Conservation Authority pool of properties? I mean, they've got thousands and thousands of acres. You would think that they would have been able to find a meadow somewhere.
I'm going to ask unless council objects. Matt, you're still online. Are you there? Yep, there he is. So unless somebody objects, I'm going to ask Matt if he'd answer that question, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I didn't ask Grand River directly. I did inquire with SVCA and GSCA if they had any suitable lands. They didn't. The way the legislation works is the Endangered Species Act that's triggered here. And I actually don't know who makes it, but there's something called eco zones. They're established. They're in the provincial policy statement as an appendix, but I don't know if that's the actual document that defines them. Anyway, it covers pretty much like all of Grey Bruce, part of Simcoe, and then even a little bit to the south and to Wellington and whatnot are all part of the same zone as far as the birds are concerned. And the way the legislation reads is you can replicate that habitat anywhere within that eco zone. It doesn't say you got to do it on a watershed basis.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. Any other questions from council regarding this? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the bylaw to actually amend the purchase and sale agreement. Someone care to move that, please? Jason, seconded by Martin. Thank you. Anything further, Lindsay? Got it right that time. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, now going back to emergency services and the young fellow at the end of the table over there who's been patiently waiting. We have a report regarding Foodland agreement and supplies to our warming centers and emergency centers if needed. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, thank you. And Barb, thank you. Chief.
Hello, through the mayor. We have a verbal agreement currently with Foodland for emergency management that if we ever needed food in our warming centers that we could access Foodland. That'd be after hours. Foodland also doesn't run on generators, just their refrigeration does. So when power goes out, they close the store. With this agreement in place, Foodland will allow us to go in there after hours or when we contact their employee, or if there's a power outage, we'll just inventory what we take and they'll get charged to our charge account afterwards. Because ultimately we are responsible to make sure we have an adequate warming center full of supplies, but it's not really feasible to have all these supplies sitting in our warming centers throughout the year as they do perish. So yeah, just an agreement in writing for what we already do.
Very good. Any questions from council? Barb?
Just a comment, and I think it goes without saying that Foodland has been a tremendous community partner in so many aspects for our emergency awareness and supply to supporting our community groups. So I'm fully supportive of formalizing the agreement that we already have in place.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the bylaw to formalize the agreement. Someone care to move the bylaw? Jim, thank you. Second by Jason. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, sir. You're free to go now. There's no cookies left though, so you can't have any of them. Economic development. Downtown Revitalization Task Force member appointment. We need a mover. Joan, would you move that one for me, please? Thank you. Seconder, Jim, thank you. Brenna, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council. Yes, this is just a list of names for our downtown revitalization task force. We approved the terms of reference last council meeting, and this is just to approve the names. So these 7 people have come forward. They're available for the period of 1 year to help us kind of assess downtown Dundalk, develop a vision, and kind of a strategy and actions to move forward with what we're going to do for revitalization. So at the end of that year period, they should bring kind of a plan to council, presenting it here, and then we'll move forward from there. Yeah, if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Brenna. Are there any questions? Martin, and then Joan.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Hi, Brenna. There's 7 people you chose. How many applicants did you have? There was a lot of interest?
It's tricky because it is during the day, because we do have to have staff there. So we did have 9 people show interest, and then these 7s can confirm their availability. But we are really lucky. We got a good mix of residents, people who work at downtown businesses, and then a few property owners. So yes, that's how they are selected.
Okay, well, you answered my second question there. A good mix of people.
Yeah.
One thing, just a comment. We did go through this quite a while back with an idea, and we actually had a layout of some revitalization plans. So you're going to be going and looking at those plans and bringing them up and seeing what they would change. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it should be.
I've been searching for it. We definitely would look at it if I could locate it. So I'll keep looking for it.
Okay.
But yeah, that was a comment from the mayor last time, or a few times ago, when we spoke about this, that there was plans. So I'll have to go through that. I know there was a survey that went out to business owners in 2020, and it was more so regarding accessibility and different things that led to the development of the CIP. But yeah, I'm gonna have to keep searching for plans regarding downtown revitalization. So far, I haven't found anything in our files.
Well, if I remember correctly, it was probably in the 2nd year of my first term, if that's a dateline. I don't know if they keep records back that far, but that would be a good starting point for these people. They might not know.
Yes, absolutely.
Might be all new. It might be all new to them, so it could be a good benchmark for them to look at.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I hope that we'll look at some of the historical records we have of the downtown too, to gain inspiration for design elements for the downtown.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Brenna. Joan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but my question was answered. I wanted to know what all the people that applied, if they were all businesses or just different area where they're from, and I got that answered. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Barb?
Through you back to Councillor Shipston. Are you referring to the concept where we were throwing around making Proton Street a one-way walkable multi-level sidewalk proposal? Yeah, so it was more specific to Proton Street business development. That might narrow your search, Brenna. And it was where we were looking at trying to make the one side of Proton Street accessible through a multi-level sidewalk with a one-way direction.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Chair, Mr. Mayor. I did find those. I think that was from the business survey, and I think many businesses, from my understanding of what I found, were not in support of it just because of the what it would impose on the service to their business or draw away from it. But we can look, I will look back at those, but I think it was from that survey.
You are very correct in how the business community responded to that proposal.
Yep, for sure. Any other questions? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Brenna. Rec Department, we have a report regarding capital projects financial reconciliation for 2024. Who wants to move that motion? Martin, thank you. Second by Jim, thank you. Kevin, welcome again.
Good day, or it's afternoon. Yeah, this report's just to tidy up some funding. Taylor, we needed it done to figure out how we're funding a couple projects from last year. The pool accessibility project came in overpriced based on what we had looked at the year previous to purchase stairs into the pool and a portable lift. When we knew the prices were coming in higher, we changed our plan for the Holstein or Hopeville roof, and we were able to cut the cost back there, but it's all out of reserves anyway. So Taylor just needed to know where we were funding the overage and which account, which would be the Dundalk Recreation Reserve.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Questions from council? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Kevin. We want to, at all costs, keep Taylor happy. Yeah, it's 20 after 2. Let's take a stretch. We'll resume at 2:30. Okay, let's reconvene, bring the meeting back to order. The next is the planning department. We have a report here regarding rail trail crossings in the Solomon area of Dundalk. Someone care to move that, please? Barb, seconded by Jim, thank you. And Ken, I presume you're taking that. I see you there back again. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. I'll be doing the next 4 items, and then the rest will be bills. So, as you mentioned, this report is a report tied to one that was received by Grey County Council, which is to address the issue of how we get new roads in our new communities across the CP Rail Trail owned by the county. This has been a back burner issue, which we're now bringing to the forefront, mainly because we need to address this issue for the new school site, since they'll be using crossings on the rail trail for construction and eventual access. So the purpose of this report is to get a motion from council to begin the process of negotiating with the county to actually take ownership of small portions of the trail as noted in the maps attached to the report. And they would become under the ownership of the township. And then we would be in a position to provide access easements to not only the school board and utility companies, but anyone else that needed to get across those trail crossings during the construction of the school site and alternate locations. And it actually makes it easier for us when the streets are deemed acceptable to be in our ownership, because we will actually own the crossing itself. But these agreements and these crossings would also have to be maintained per the county OP to make sure that if eventually rail comes back, that we can still provide that, and that it would not prevent the recreational trail that exists from continuing to occur. So the motions before you are to support this process. I would note that the last motion kind of is now redundant, because originally we thought that our report would actually get out in front of the counties, but they kind of managed to get it onto an earlier agenda. So if you wanted to amend that last motion to simply say forward your resolution to Grey County, that would be reasonable. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ken. And yes, indeed, the county, due to some advocacy, the county is well aware of this, and they're motivated to get this done. So that's good. Any questions from council? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. The next one is a motion or a resolution regarding the Glenelg Phase 3 red line support. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, thank you. Martin will second that. Thank you. Ken?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As council will recall, we've had 2 plans of subdivision that have required amendments, and as is the typical process with the county, they seek endorsement of those changes with the local municipality before they occur. This is specific to the school site because we've come up with a process to try and move that forward relatively quickly. So the red line would simply be taking out the school site as noted in the map in the attachment from the existing draft plan approval and any references to that area within any of the conditions. And just for council's information, the other red line support that you gave to White Rose Phase 3 about a few weeks ago just recently was approved by the county, so that those red line changes are turned around quite quickly.
Thank you, Ken.
Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from council? Okay, not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. The next report is on the next page, and it is regarding the OLT, formerly known as the LPAT attendance policy. And there's some changes here that staff would like to bring forward. Anybody care to move that, please? Joan will move and Martin will second. Ken?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is a policy that due to staff turnover, most of us were not aware of. As council is aware, the tribunal for planning appeals has changed a number of times. Some of you may know it as the Ontario Municipal Board. It then became LPAT. Now it's the OLT. We'll see what it will be in a couple weeks' time. But that said, the policy recognizes a default position of not defending appeals. We do have an appeal that's live. That situation is a bit unique and it falls into a gray area of this policy. But this policy also doesn't recognize how the tribunal has changed, how appeal rates have changed, and some of the mechanisms that the tribunal has, such as requiring planners to attend, even if the municipality takes position not to defend, we could be summoned. And so we recommend that the policy be changed, just to update council when an appeal is received, and simply you would make a decision and we would navigate that as you determine. We're also just requesting, for the sake of clarity, a resolution to confirm the process that we've embarked upon with the current appeal, given that that's a rather unique situation that doesn't fall within the intent of the existing policy.
Very
Happy
good.
to
Thank
answer
you.
questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Are there any questions? Barb?
Just one through you, Mayor. To Ken, thank you. And just to clarify, this doesn't require us to attend or participate. It just gives us the ability to, if required.
Through your worship, that's correct. Any municipality can choose not to defend an appeal. What we're suggesting with any changes is that you don't take a position on any appeal. We would simply notify council, we have received a valid appeal. What do you want us to do? And seek your direction going forward.
Any other questions? Martin, yep, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Afternoon, Ken. With this being a legal procedure with the tribunal, you said staff might have to be summoned. I was just wondering, obviously council might not have to be, would any members of the Committee of Adjustment have to abide?
Through your worship, I've not seen that occur. Generally, it is the planners that would be summoned.
Yeah, and I think the idea of having legal counsel for case by case is a good idea too, so.
Thanks, Martin. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. The next item deals with the site plan control bylaw amendment, amending agreements related to the policy we put in place, I don't know, a week or two ago, or a bylaw rather. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, seconded by Martin. Thank you. Ken?
Yes, thank you, your worship. This will be my last item, then it will be over to Bill. As you say, you amended the site plan control bylaw last week, and we found one issue that we thought should probably be clarified a bit with a textual amendment. So that is what is before you, just to make it very clear that with the activation of the pre-existing delegation of site plan agreements to be executed by the clerk and the mayor, once our legal side has determined the agreement's ready to go, that also any amendments to those agreements would be part of that delegation too.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions from council? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. The
Thank you.
bylaw, the bylaw regarding site plan control bylaw, or amending site plan control bylaw. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, seconded by Joan. Thank you. And Bill, once again.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. If I could only be so brief and concise as Ken, he's excellent. So,
Well, giving yourself a little more experience, you'll get better.
Hang on.
Mayor Milne, the members of council.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Bill,
Sorry,
hang
Bill.
on. We're out of order. We still have to vote on the actual bylaw to amend the site plan control
Did we
bylaw.
not, did we miss that? Or-
Unless I missed it, but Alicia's looking at me too. that-
I was going to jump in, your worship. The
Yeah,
vote didn't
and then
actually
we'll go to Bill on 9.5.6.
Ah, yes, I see the error in my ways here now. Apologies, council.
That's okay.
So I need a mover and seconder for the bylaw. Correct. Someone care? Martin, seconded by Jim. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. So now we come to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I think that's yours, right, Bill?
Thank you, Mayor Milne. That's correct.
Okay, I need a mover and seconder. So I got Jim and I got Barb. Okay, Bill, you're up.
Thank you. The township official plan has, since its adoption in 2022, contained a provision that said the township will implement zoning bylaw amendments to allow on-farm diversified uses as of right. In other words, a zoning amendment application would not be needed for every on-farm diversified use. I think that's a reaction to probably a sense of a little bit of frustration that council and staff may have had with the number of amendments that come forward. I've been surprised at how many there have been in the year or so since I've been helping with the work here or there. But through with Ken's direction and in consultation with staff, we've put together a proposal that might take some, not all, but some of those zoning amendments off the table. On-farm diversified uses would still be subject to site plan approval and to building code approval, so they would need a building permit. And all the provisions that normally you look for, such as proper setbacks from wetlands and nothing in hazard areas, and buffering and screening and location of these OFDUs and size would be regulated in the zoning bylaw. So they would still comply with the standards that normally are applicable in a rezoning, but they wouldn't actually have to go through the whole process. We felt as a group that allowing every single OFDU to go through probably without an amendment would probably not be A, achievable, or B, desirable, in particular for lots under 20 hectares. So any proposed OFDU, if you go through this amendment, with this amendment, any OFDU or home industry on something under 20 hectares that didn't meet the general provisions in the zoning bylaw would need a rezoning. We further separated them between what are called, what we've called them as dry industrial type on-farm diversified uses, and those are the ones that you see almost all the time. Those are the shops, the welding shops, the woodworking shops, and so forth. And so there's a series of regulations proposed for dry industrial shops over 40 hectares and between 20 and 40 hectares, so lot size. So on-farm dry industrial shops on lots over 40 hectares in size would still be limited to 750 square meters, and they would have to have a operating area that is less than 8,000 square meters, or maximum 8,000 square meters. And they would also have limits on their floor area and other setbacks and regulations and requirements. Those are familiar to you in some way because those are the standards in the township official plan right now. And they're also more or less in the county official plan, and they would be carried forward in this proposed zoning amendment. The second classification of dry industrial uses would be for 20 to 40 hectare lot sizes. And these would have slightly more stringent requirements because the lots are smaller, and the operating area for the on-farm diversified use would be a percentage of the lot. I think it's 2%, and the floor area would be limited to 9%. So if you're getting down closer to 20 hectares, then you would get nowhere near the floor area that, say, some of them have been, which is often a little bit higher than 2% of the lot, the operating, or sorry, 9% of the operating area. Anyway, it's quite technical and lots of percentages I'm throwing around, but I just wanted to make the point that there's different classifications for the dry industrial under between 20 and 40 and for 40 and over. And at all times, the Conservation Authority provisions for wetland setbacks and county ecology provisions for lands and EP zones would be protected. The last classification of, excuse me, OFDUs are, from my experience, a lot less common. And those are the retail type restaurant uses that are allowed and provided for in the official plan. But in our view, we felt like they should not necessarily be 7,000 or 750 square meters, which is, pretty large restaurant or retail store on a farm. Are you getting up 8,000 square feet? So while a factory maybe, as far as parking would generate a little less parking requirements and members of the public coming, a retail store that size could be quite an endeavor. And if any of you have been to a lobster supper in PI or to, wineries in Niagara on the Lake or whatever, you can see they could become quite sizable and quite busy. And at this point, our recommendation is to not allow that large of a retail restaurant type OFDU as of right. In fact, we've cut that down to 300 square meters, which there's an example of some of the restaurant sizes in and around Southgate right now, the Spot and so forth. So we've kept it, even A&W. So we've kept it at 300 square meters for those OFDUs that are retail restaurant type. So that's what the zoning amendment would accomplish if it goes through. We're certainly interested in feedback from council because it's quite a bit of a change from the process you would be used to. And it's allowing for the retail type on-farm diversified uses to go ahead. And I'm not sure you've had too many of those through rezoning. So I certainly haven't seen one yet that I can recall. These would be still subject to site plan approval, but of course that agreement would be, and the approval of the site plan is a delegated authority. So as long as they're complying with these on-farm diversified use zoning rules, if you approve them, then you would not be seeing some of these applications at all. But your staff would be ensuring that there's compliance. The mayor and clerk, under the new site plan agreement provisions you just approved, would be signing the site plan agreement. And then the chief building official would be making sure they had permits. All the usual things about minimum distance separation and D6 guidelines, they would all be have to comply with those requirements. And so if there was any issue with those, then you could see some of these coming back for rezoning. Our proposal to you is that we talk about the proposed amendment as constituted at this point, and then staff would like to see perhaps hosting an open house at the Holstein site, and also having the legislative public meeting before anything goes forward. Happy to try and answer any questions or provide more detail if council would like.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any questions from council? Barb.
Thank you. Through you to Bill. I can support going to a public open house and then a statutory public meeting. I have a lot of concern with eliminating public consultation, because if you take it out of the zoning amendment process, does that mean that the neighboring properties aren't circulated on the application? They don't have input. We've already delegated authority for site plan approval. We're getting feedback, or at least I am, that, we're just giving up the farm. We're delegating all of our authority away and taking away the transparency piece of the public. So yes, it still requires building department. It still requires site plan. but where's that public engagement? So I'm happy to let this go out to an open house and the statutory public meeting, and we'll see what kind of feedback we get. My question is, if we remove this and it's no longer a zoning amendment, how then is it reassessed as a industrial portion of that agricultural land in order to help compensate for the wear and tear on the road?
Bill?
Good question through you, Mayor Milne. The building permits used to and probably still are shared with MPAC. So they would be aware of the new building through that process. But you're correct. If this goes through, there is no public feedback on this like any other building that complies with zoning and goes through site plan control. There would not be any feedback unless you got into some kind of business licensing or something like that. But you can't, in my opinion, require public feedback for zoning rules. The public feedback for that is through this process right now. And so we would have, the intent is to put in separations, and there are some regulations in there from adjacent residences that have to be met. And if they're not met, then they're into the rezoning process, which does have public input. But you're correct. There's no way of, in my view, writing into the zoning that you have to notify your neighbors or anything like that. Not for a comprehensive amendment like this. Once it's done, it's in there, and if they comply, then they get site plan approval and they meet all the other applicable law, they can get a building permit and proceed.
Barb?
So to my point, yes, the building department sends the permit into MPAC, but that doesn't include what it's classified as, I don't think. That's just the assessed value. Where then does MPAC get notified that this is now an industrial use, an on-farm diversified use gets reclassified out of agriculture, the 2% or the 2 acres of a 100-acre parcel gets reclassified as industrial, taxed at a higher rate, which is supposed to help with the road improvements and maintenance. So if there isn't a rezoning, how then do we ensure that they're being taxed appropriately is a concern. So that's something that we can explore and maybe get an answer to if this goes through. We already receive concerns about Southgate becoming an industrial parkway, and that these on-farm diversified uses are they're popping up they're being approved to pop up everywhere on smaller and smaller lots. I think we need some measure of control, and as I said, I'm happy to support this going through the public process. I'm not certain that I can support it in the long run.
Phil, do you want to comment on the rezoning piece, please? Or
Just briefly, I think that's a good point, and that's why we're seeking feedback from council now and through the open house and public meeting process, because you're not obligated to do this, except that your official plan says that you would. So we've given you quite a broad range of options that allows retail and dry industrial on smaller lots. But you could simply do a rezoning that only allowed dry industrial on 40-hectare lots or over and be very restrictive. And then I think you would have completed your obligation under the official plan to pre-zone for some of them. And that would take some of them off your table as far as the process of rezoning, which, although application fees cover the bulk of that, still time consuming at the council agenda and so forth.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank
Phil?
you.
So with the building permit application, the permit is issued by occupancy type. So it wouldn't be residential or agricultural, it would be commercial. And that's what MPAC's looking at. I don't know about the rezoning portion of it, but.
Sure.
Yep, thank you. That is a concern that we want to make sure that we're taxing it appropriately and that there are measures in place. So that takes one concern off of my list of things. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Martin?
Thank you, Brian. Bill or Ken, on page 5 of your report, the official plan, it has a list of what has to be done for the agricultural and the rural. Owner of lands, bona fide farmer with farm business registration, agricultural, yes, he has to have it, but it says no for the rural. And then a rural designation, he might not be a farmer, but he could be having a hobby farm by right. So I think it's $7,000 where you, after that, you have to have your bona fide farmer agricultural number. So why is it no for rural? Is that the size of lot? If he's still making money farming, he should have that bona fide number.
Yeah, if I may, through Mayor Milne,
Please.
That's the current policy now in the official plan. So it's a subtle point that we usually make in the reports on these, but in the rural, you're correct. Right now, you could have a farm and not be a bona fide farmer and still have an OFDU. So that provision isn't checked for. It doesn't need to be under the official plan. The way the draft zoning is written now, though, it would have to be operated and owned by a bona fide farmer, regardless of the size of the lot, and you wouldn't even look at whether it's rural or agriculture. You would just look at the zoning, which would be A1, and then these provisions would apply. And we would make sure by definition they are farm owned by a bona fide farmer and they have a farm business registration number.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because it said in agricultural designation, a bona fide farmer is not required for bed and breakfast, a home, or whatever. So yeah, thanks for that clarification, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? And again, we're just asking, staff is just asking to take this to an open house and then a statutory public meeting. We're not approving anything here today. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Bill. The next one is part lot control extension request from Flatto Edgewood Greens. Someone care to move that, please? Martin and Jim, thank you. Bill, is this yours as well, or Victoria?
That's me, Mayor Milne.
Okay. You're on, please.
Council may recall doing part lot control provisions for previous applications. This is a process where you remove the provisions of the Planning Act that require a severance before you convey a piece of land. In this case, what's happened, and in those bylaws, you've normally put a time period on them of 2 years. This bylaw in particular has now getting close to expiry. The Planning Act allows for extensions to that period up to 1 year without notification of the county. MHBC has submitted a request on behalf of the developer, owner of the lands, to request the extension. A bylaw has been drafted that would allow for the additional time period. There's several blocks that are subject to this change. They're shown in the attachments to the report, and based on my looking at the current Google mapping for the site, most of those properties now have townhouses on them. So in order to put them into separate ownership and transfer those lands, they need an extension to the part lot control bylaw, and we're recommending that it be extended. There's no need for the county to approve this extension, although they are the approval authority for subdivisions. It does say consents in the executive summary, but county as approval authority for subdivisions does not need to approve the extension. They do approve the original bylaw, but not the additional time period. So the extension request is set to expire on the 30th of March. be the 26th of, I think it's the 26th of March, 2026.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any questions from council? Barb?
Thank you. And I don't know how many times I've read this. Are the houses are built, but they haven't been severed?
Yes, that's correct. Through the
And
chair, they're there, but they're not, they can't be put into separate lots. If this bylaw expires, they would need a severance to put them into individual ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Call a question. All those in favor? That is carried. So now we're regarding the bylaw related to the preceding report. Someone care to move it?
I just want to note Counselor Joan had to leave, so she's gone from the meeting.
Okay, we still have quorum. So I need a mover for this report, or this bylaw rather. Jason, seconded by Jim. Thank you. Any questions, discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate your time today. And thank you, Victoria, for listening in on all of that. So now we'll move on to Public Works. I see Corey has joined us. Good afternoon, Corey. First report from Corey is regarding the Dundalk Drinking Water Annual Report for 2024. Barb will move that. Somebody want to second it? Jim, thank you. Corey, you're up, please.
Hello, everyone. I just picked a few highlights from the drinking water report. So the first one is that we had 0 unsafe samples. So that's always our goal, safe drinking water. And then we have trending adverse sodium, which has been historically trending and was the same again this year. And one addition to our system was a bulk water station that we installed at the water tower. And that, after some software and programming issues, it seems to be running well. And I even seen it being used on some of these really cold days by some of the contractors. So there's a few things I wanted to highlight. I'm open to any questions from the report.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Are there any questions from council? Nope, not seeing any, so I'll call. Oh, Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, Corey. Again, a great report. With the fluoride and sodium, they're all naturally occurring, but I looked at some of the tables that you have for the volatile, small print here, volatile organics and inorganics. Are they naturally occurring? Because it seems to be consistent for each page you have, like 167 to 169 or whatever your report is, like copper, iron, lead, manganese, zinc, xylene, and the other one I can't even say. But this seems to be a consistent yellow batch on each graph. Are they naturally occurring or?
Yeah, all those are naturally occurring elements. The only thing we add to our water is chlorine.
Yeah.
Other than that, everything is natural.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, just seeing that ethyl benzene and not xylene, you know, that's organic. I don't know how that is, but it just seems ominous. But I could see the lead and everything like that. That is naturally occurring. But okay. No, as I said, guys are doing a great job, so you're on the ball.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Corey. Okay, any other questions on the water? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the wastewater annual report for 2024. I'll ask for a mover to receive that. Jim, second by Martin. Thank you. Corey?
Oh yeah, just I picked a couple of things to highlight. So one was the emergency discharge event that occurred last spring, due to being shut down and not being able to discharge. And then that on top of snow melt and rainfall, our lagoons became to a point where they were at the brim of the cells, and with the ministry approval, we started an emergency discharge. Even though we were discharging there, the flows were still too high for us to keep up. And we ended up overflowing one of our structures into the natural environment, which was considered a spill, which was reported. So that was quite an event to learn from. We've never had that type of situation before, so we've come up with a plan to submit to the ministry to avoid those circumstances. And then with the upgrades coming, hopefully soon, that we will never be in that situation. We'll be able to meet our criteria year round and be able to discharge year round.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey. Does council have any questions regarding the wastewater report? Barb?
Not so much a question, but just curious, with the volume of snow this year, and let's pray we don't get a lot of rain. Do you anticipate the plan that you have put in place to mitigate any emergencies given, I mean, how could we have anticipated this much snow?
That's definitely that's definitely something on my mind. The amount of snowfall and how it's going to melt if it all happens at once. I can't say 100% that the plan will mitigate it. Like if the flows are astronomical and we're not, even if we are able to discharge, we still might not be able to keep up. But so far this year, we've been able to discharge a lot longer than we did last year. The ponds at the moment are currently low. I'm optimistic we'll be in good shape this year.
Optimism is great.
But hope isn't a plan. However, thank you, Corey. Any other questions?
I've got one.
Martin, go ahead.
Yeah. Corey, it says on here that you used the ultrasonic device from Water IQ. Does that really work quite well? I did see them at a conference. So is that ours or do you lease it or?
So that was a temporary trial.
Yeah.
I can't say conclusively that it worked well.
Oh, okay.
We had dosed the ponds with alum, cell 4 with alum at the same time as installing the ultrasonic. So we can't say for sure that it worked well in cell 4 because the alum could have been what worked well.
Yeah.
Then when we did move it to cell 1, there was a lot of issues with, we moved it to a solar panel charging system. And there was just constant issues with that. And the supplier, he'd be a week or 2 weeks to come and make his repairs on the solar panel. And it never did show good results in cell 1. So I can't say for sure that it worked well.
Okay. No, I just thought if it did work well, that, we're going to be using the lagoons for a while. If that would be a possible budget item in the future to get our own instead of getting somebody in. So anyway, good to know that it's, you tried it out. So that's good.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Corey. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Corey. Certainly appreciate you coming on to the meeting this afternoon. Take care.
You too.
Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the deputy mayor as I have a pecuniary interest related to this matter. One of my family members is a successful bidder.
I do as well. So we're gonna have quorum then, or?
Yeah, we can, with, to the clerk.
I forgot, so.
Declare pecuniary interest, declare pecuniary interest. I think we can go down to 2.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I forgot about it.
Yeah, it doesn't count
I'll
against that.
declare one then.
Okay. All right, well, we have Public Works 2025-008 quotes and tender award recommendations. Be it resolved that we receive the report for information and that we approve the award of the 2025 Dundalk Water and Wastewater Rate Study to Watson Associates Economist Limited in the amount of 33,816 plus HST, that council approve the recommendations to award equipment rentals for 2025 as received, and approve the recommendations to award the 2025 road maintenance tenders as received from Holland Transport, H-By Construction, and Donegan's Haulage Limited. Got to get a mover and seconder, please. Jim and Martin. Who's taking this? John, thank you.
Yeah, for the most part, this is just our usual annual tenders for equipment rentals, as well as the calcium crush, load and apply maintenance gravel and the winter sand supply. But also in here, we have the water and wastewater rate study, as you said. So
Okay.
any questions?
Are there any questions from council? No questions. I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. I'll turn the chair back over to Mayor Milne. You done?
Thank you, Barb. Legislative Services is the next department. We're going to have a report from regarding the purchase and sale extension approval for Wilson. Oh, we already did that one. There we go. Yeah, we did that one as well. So we have no bylaws and motions. Is there any notice of motion? What? Yes, we have. Yeah. Yeah. Which one of us is going to dance? All right. There is no notice of motion. I don't see any. Consent items, regular business. There's 3 items there. Anybody have any of those they want removed for further direction? Not seeing any. I'll call it I need a mover and a seconder. Barb and Jim, thank you. All those in favor? Oh. Sure, go ahead. Right after we say we've been here too long. Go ahead.
Well, at least the meeting wasn't canceled last night due to
True
road
enough, true
closures.
enough.
So I just wanted to give John an opportunity to speak to the bridge inspection report and anything that he'd like to elaborate on.
John?
Again, just the usual, we get our bridges inspected, half of them 1 year, half the next year. And this just lays out that they are deteriorating, but we're trying to keep on top of maintenance and do what minor repairs we can to extend the life of the bridges.
Very good. Thank you, John. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Correspondence, there's one item there from the OLT. Someone care to move or see to that? Barb, seconded by Jim. All those in favor? That's carried. Third and final piece of consent is resolutions of other municipalities. We have one there from the town of Cobourg. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, seconded by Jason. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. County report. Barb?
Well, I think we covered some of it because the rail trail we've already dealt with. I think just a reminder that the region's job fair is returning tomorrow at the Bayshore Community Center. It's I think it is the largest regional job fair, at least in this area. So yeah, other than that, it was business as usual, and it can be viewed online at their YouTube station. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of the county stuff? Things, items? Okay. Members' privilege. Anybody have anything they wish to discuss? I'm going to hold the rodent to his prediction. Otherwise, I will hunt him down. Her, whatever it is. Wyatt and Willie. Or Scooby. What's the other one? Yeah, that one too. Yeah. I don't know. There's a bunch of them. Willie, I think, was the only one that said we're going to have an early.
Yeah.
Hotsatani. Yeah, that one. Okay, we have no closed meeting. Sure, exactly. So we have confirming bylaw. Someone care to move that, please? Martin, will you move the confirming bylaw? Yes, he will. And Barb will second that. All of those in favor? That is carried. And we have one final motion. Jason and Jim, all those in favor that we adjourn? We're done. Thank you all.